Here is my original TEDx speech. It actually told the story of a wonderful coming of age experience I had, which was also one of my first overseas and my first study abroad adventure. It was filled with drama, humor, moments of curiosity, learning, and growth, as well as a plot twist at the end. After 3 months of writing, editing, and rehearsing this speech, it turned out that this was not meant to be heard here today on this stage. The winds of change blew a different direction. And so, I'm afraid you won't be hearing this story, but I have another one, a little more real, a little more recent, and something that was much more profound in my life. Let me pick up from the last story that I told several months ago from a stage not far from here, a few miles away. I recounted the story of my dear wife, Diana, and after 26 years of marriage, her unfortunate passing away due to ALS. It was a difficult story to tell, vulnerable and very personal. And after completing that story, I also talked to the audience a little bit about my own path forward, how I coped during and after, often feeling that I did that very well, and how I found the strength to pick up and take new steps forward, especially with the help of support with friends and encouragement along the way. Just one day after losing my dear wife, my lovely wife, Diana, COVID-19 hit our shores. It completely closed down my city, my workplace, my church, my faith community, even and essentially our whole nation, at just the precise moment that I needed that personal touch to heal from so many in my own community. However, bolstered by the help of family, friends, again, my faith community, which I really did rely on quite a bit to get through this, as well as many of the people in this room, including some of our speakers today, I picked up and learned to thrive again and dedicated myself to trying new things. So let me list 4 of those things that I did, and then I'll go into a little more detail to show why they were important. First, I started and completed a professional certification about 18 months after this loss. Then I joined 2 different coaching programs, which would allow me essentially to learn not just technical or new skills specifically for my job, but actually more so in the sense of emotional intelligence, mindset, scientific understanding of our brain and our behaviors. And I even ventured a little further to go to the inaugural conference and then attended other conferences after that. And I think I'll stop here to just say that was a very hard thing. It was my first trip without my wife, not on business reasons, but just really more for like a personal and adventure opportunity where she was not able to join me. It was a big step, and this was all during COVID when pretty much everything you did, particularly stepping on airplanes, was a great risk. And we held the conference. It was a wonderful success. The other things that came out of that, as Allison mentioned earlier, or collaboration on a book project over my transformative journey I've shared with other authors here, as well as my big courageous moment to come up on stage and tell that vulnerable story and talk about exactly how important it was to share my journey, but actually to empower others with encouragement too. Having gone through many up levels, building myself back up over the next few years, the waves of change happened again, this time in the sense of some major challenges. In November of last year, after 8.5 years working as a program manager for a regional healthcare company near my home in Denver, Colorado, I lost my job due to a corporate downsizing. Now, it's not unexpected in the sense of a corporate merger that these types of things can happen and they tend to be a little random, and I was caught up in that. It did lead me to question, had I taken my job a little too much for granted, and perhaps my job security felt like something that could never be taken away? Or perhaps this was just the break and the release I needed at this time in my life, particularly for some of the other setbacks that would come later. It was actually my first ever sabbatical where I had been working for decades continuously. I think at best, perhaps I got 1 week off for good behavior. So I spent those next several weeks during the holidays actually enjoying my time off. And then those challenges hit. So the other major one for me was going through a prolonged unemployment, which, as we all know, our profession tends to define our identity in life. It shouldn't. We're far more than just our job title or the name of the business that we founded or a partnership or collaboration that we use to generate income. But this was very true for me. My title, my profession, my role in an organization did define a lot about me. And it was very difficult all of a sudden not to be wearing that hat, whether I was meeting with other professionals or my online presence. And whether you believe, like me, that everything happens for a reason, or there are no coincidences in life, or that change that you most need will find you at the perfect time, it was still very unsettling that every one of my steps forward, particularly in this job search, stubbed my toe against another closed door. And emotionally, stubbing your toes can also hurt. The final setback just happened over the last few months. My mother, who had been enjoying robust health her whole lifetime, essentially, as far as I knew, she had never really been in the hospital, almost died on more than one occasion in the last few months. She actually had several falls, which created critical injuries, which took her from ER to surgery to ICU to rehabilitation and back again 3 times. She's in rehab right now, getting stronger, giving us renewed hope. But I guess, like my job, I simply took for granted that she would always be able to live that independent lifestyle that she had been very well acquainted with. And yet, once this happened, it created huge uncertainty, not just for her, but for my brother and I, who are fortunate enough to live in the same town, and yet had to reshuffle our own schedules, our own lives, in such a way to provide her the transitional care she needed each time to get back up on her feet. And so, what are some of the conclusions that I've come to, particularly about this topic of control? Is there anything we actually control in our lives? Or is it kind of a set of randomness that happens to us? Well, life does indeed happen. Life never stands still. We will have times of loss and then rebuilding, setbacks leading to uncertainty, positive changes that lead in new directions. And as soon as we think that we have completely mastered our life and that we are in control, I assure you, some new surprise circumstance will pop up and throw us completely out of orbit. Are you ready? Another thing I learned essentially that I never would have thought about before, particularly being a business professional, was what happens when you're unemployed and everyone else is giving you that indication that that's not the right state to be. You know, how can you continue to not be working? And of course, it wasn't a preferred choice, not my preferred solution. What I did find instead was, as I was saying earlier, change will find you the change you most need at the perfect time. I couldn't be in any way aware that that's what I needed. It has allowed me instead to work on several other things that are important. One, taking care of an elderly parent who needs her son, needs both of her sons. Two, the ability to actually start my first book, which I'm very excited to release very soon. Three, to be able to deliver this speech on fairly short notice, as I ripped up my little one. And four, to even start arranging for my new side business, which I'm going to be hoping to launch this year. And I'd like to leave you with 4 different lessons that have helped me, and I believe could help all of you in a similar fashion. I call these the letter S, the S statements. They are self-care, soul. The last one is called safari, and I put one in the middle called support, which kind of buttresses everything. Self-care, as you know, and has become very common, is a very important time to take care of emotional, physical, and mental needs. This could be anything, I think, that releases stress in your life, particularly taking a walk, getting outside, if you like to dance or jog. I personally like to get on my bicycle and take the paths into the local foothills in Colorado. Sometimes it can be as simple as tea time, taking a cup of tea or coffee by a window, looking outside, watching the birds near a lake, what have you. And self-care is kind of the building block. Next is soul. And soul is taking care of both the spiritual disciplines, another concrete need that humans have. And it doesn't have to be just prayer or a faith life, worship, scriptures, but it can also include everything from meditation to self-reflection, journaling, and anything else that basically makes our soul thrive. Support has to do with taking time to create those beautiful moments with all the people in our lives, particularly those who love and support us, the ones that sometimes even it's easy to say no to. I'm busy. I don't have time. And yet, taking that time is an important way to bond as humans, to share love, to show support for each other as we're doing here today. And the final one I call safari. Let me explain. A safari is that bigger risk. It's going way outside of your normal habits, routines. It doesn't have to be a safari park, by the way. This could be taking a vacation, going on a retreat, attending a conference, learning and being inspired. But I think that we always need to go beyond ourselves that little bit. Maybe do that one thing that others have encouraged us to do. Jumping out of a plane, preferably with a parachute, or maybe just going on some new adventure and trying someplace new that you've never been. And finally, I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time to learn, be inspired, go on safari, and enjoy yourself.